Hi, everybody. This is Ben with NatureLink, and I want to welcome you to FireKeepers Global Conference, in which we will gather for powerful conversations with cutting-edge experts and thought leaders who will guide you to connect to your truest self and activate your natural gifts. This event is designed to reinstate the importance of carrying our soul-directed vision back into your communities so that ourselves and our communities will flourish. Here you are invited to learn how to seek your inner guidance to your inner voice so that you can truly understand what it means to live life purpose. I want to welcome Hillary and Bradford Keeney to the summit today. And before they introduce themselves, I'll just give them a quick introduction because they have quite the background. Hillary is an internationally renowned teacher and interdisciplinary scholar of ecstatic transformation. She is also currently distinguished visiting professor at Benemérita, Universidad Autónoma de Puebla, visiting professor at the National Autonomous University of Mexico, and associate editor of the journal Dance Movement and Spiritualities. I might pronounce his name wrong, but Jay Waljasper, is that correct, Hillary? Mm-hmm. Former editor of Utne Reader, calls Hillary a bold explorer of the healing arts. Her extensive study of dance at the University of Michigan and the University of Colorado, along with academic degrees in women's studies, social work, and interdisciplinary studies, provides unique breadth and depth for understanding the art of changing lives. Hillary is also an authentic traditional healer with incapable scholarship. She has co-authored with Brad, including books such as Recursive Frame Analysis, a qualitative research method for mapping change-oriented discourse, The Creative Therapist in Practice, Siku Jutsu, Way of the Bushmen, and their three-book series, Sacred Ecstatics, the recipe.
You sound like an interesting person. I should make an appointment with you. Thanks for introducing us.
Yeah, we haven't gotten to Brad yet.
That's right. I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
For the recipe for setting your soul on fire, climbing the rope to God, mystical testimony and teaching, and the spiritual engineering of sacred ecstasy. Mm-hmm. Her writing has been acclaimed as destined to be a classic, a masterful account of a profound way of healing, an amazing work that exceeds the promises in Gregory Bateman's writing, and a clear meaning of heart and mind. Wow, that is a lot.
Yeah, she is quite fascinating. Yeah, I'm glad I got to know you. Yeah.
All right, now Brad's turn.
On stage.
I'm your target.
Try topping that.
Fire away. Yeah, don't tell the truth now.
Bradford Keeney.
Fire. Set me on fire.
Bradford Keeney is a critically acclaimed for his creative innovations in the art of conducting experiential transformation. He was accepted as a healer by the Kalahari Bushmen, the San Bushmen of Southern Africa, and the healers of Bali, Mexico, Brazil, St. Vincent, Japan, and other traditions. Megan Basili, a former member of the Harvard Kalahari Research Group, writes that there is no question in the minds of the Bushman healers that Keeney's strength and purposes are conformous with theirs. They affirmed his power as a healer. Daniel Goleman, former science reporter of the New York Times, concluded that Brad's life story is important to anyone wanting to understand the full spectrum of paths to heal the heart, mind, body, and soul. Brad also served as a professor, director, and founder of doctoral programs in numerous universities. Following his early contributions that applied cybernetics to psychotherapy, he invented the research method called recursive frame analysis, which I'm excited to ask you about. And with Hillary, there you go, Hillary, created a new orientation to therapeutic practice called creative therapy. Most importantly, Hillary and Brad co-developed Sacred Ecstatics, a radically practical approach to spiritual transformation that brings together embodied cybernetics, the improvisational, performance arts, and the tactic know-how of ecstatic healing traditions. Their books, essays, recordings, and live performances bring something profound to the world. The luminous fire that must be felt in order to melt away whatever impedes the next adventure in the mystery. I love that. So Hillary and Brad's topic for the interview today is Sacred Ecstatics, Setting Your Soul on Fire. Awesome. And my first question is, what is the primary contribution of Sacred Ecstatics?
Well, maybe that's answered by translating your introduction. In other words,
Very good.
Hillary and I are fire setters, fire tenders, and fire spreaders. And
That's
by that
right.
I mean we want the wildfire of that which is on the inside, on the outside, and spread from one relationship to another, community to community, and then to be inclusive of all that lives and all that's related to the living. So that Sacred Ecstatics is really about how do you get the spark so that when people talk about ecology and they talk about life, that it's more than an abstraction. It's something felt and something embodied, something enacted in how you perform your life in relation to others.
And it'd be interesting to just say a little bit about what we mean by fire, or when we speak about setting your soul on fire, or getting spiritually cooked, or turning up the spiritual heat. So in ecstatic traditions, which among them, as you mentioned, are the Kalahari Bushmen of Southern Africa, the oldest living culture, oldest living, earliest religion that we can name. Fire has two meanings. Of course, one is what we all know of as the fire that burns in the center of a dance circle. But fire is also a metaphor for a special kind of heightened emotion that one feels when they feel close to divinity, when they feel close to the divine. And it's a mixture of a special extreme joy, a special heart opening that's also inseparable from singing and dance and musicality and rhythm. So all those things together are really what we mean by setting your soul on fire, spreading the fire, tending the fire. And what's interesting about Sacred Ecstatics is that we do this with people from all different walks of life and from all different spiritual backgrounds. So we are trying to wake up that feeling of extreme love. Sometimes we call it mystery love, the vibration that makes the body move, the rhythms, the spark. And we do it in a way that anybody can experience from any walk of life.
Very good.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well said. Beautiful. I love how y'all bring this to the public in your own unique way, such as saying like spiritually cooked, and then using the fire analogy in there. It's beautiful. And with the fire relating to the soul topic, of course, and then the topic of this summit as well. One of the questions that I had listed, but I might phrase it in a different way, is like when you hear the words like soul directed or carrying vision, and we've kind of related to that a little bit, but when you hear the words soul directed or carrying vision, what does that mean to Sacred Ecstatics in your personal work?
Well, I want to back up and say one of the interesting things that we've learned with over 40 years of field work with people who lived with mystical vision, by that I mean a vision of mystery, not a vision of knowing, a vision of being able to relate in a felt way to the incomprehensible, ineffable, numinous, unexplainable vastness of infinity that includes all particles and waves, and all forms of critter.
Mm-hmm.
Is that before you can really responsibly speak about what it is to have a fire within and how that fire can light a vision and guide a vision and correct a vision and sort a vision and purify a vision and relight a vision and go through all this alchemy over and over again, is that you just first need to learn how to sing and dance without making it happen willfully. That is, you have to be so struck by the wild of nature that you spontaneously break into a dance and sing a song and have a rhythm that precipitates so much emotion, as Hillary said, so much emotion. We call it the pinnacle emotion because it's an emotion most people have never felt. Mm-hmm. And when you feel that emotion, you just start trembling and you start moving, shaking and shouting. Mm-hmm. And ecstatic traditions, including those in Appalachia mm-hmm. and all across the southern United States and everywhere around the world, have in common mm-hmm. that you need a song before you know what it truly means to long for a vision. Mm-hmm. And to own a vision is inseparable from receiving a song and feeling the downpour, the infusion of a holiness, of the big holy, as some of our friends say. That makes it impossible for you not to surrender to the whole of ecology, which includes, in particular, the unexplainable, that which is uncontrollable, including all the wonderful things each of us wants to do to save the world. We are just too small and cannot begin until we're a part of it all and feeling the big awe. Then we're tuned and better able to speak about vision. Mm-hmm. So you need to have a song. You need to have a song. You need to really have a song that says, I really want to be here for everything, leaving nothing out. You got to have that song and feel it so that you get the hook up mm-hmm. to that which moves you. Then we can talk about vision. And then I would only say that it's important to have an audition. You need to hear as well as see. And sometimes we overemphasize seeing a vision mm-hmm. when we need to hear a song. And even more importantly, we need to feel the heart of the creator. Mm-hmm. We need to hear the heartbeat of creation. Mm-hmm. And altogether, we're a multi-sensory initiated being.
Yeah, and I would say that being soul directed, we could just say that means rather than just thinking about what is our abstract definition of having a soul, mm-hmm. it means bringing soul to whatever it is that we're doing.
Soul food.
Yeah, and I think that when people feel their relationship to the world of mystery, to spiritual mystery, is awakened and on fire, when they feel the music inside them, when they feel their body tingle in that way, then we can say that whatever we do will be soul directed, because it'll be infused with that special kind of life force that we're hunting for. And I think all of us that are on any kind of spiritual path, whatever that looks like, and as you mentioned in your own life, you just are in situations where all of a sudden you realize that there is something more than what meets the eye. There is something deeper. There's a world of spirit. There's a world of relationship. There's a world of mystery. There is the numinous. Mm-hmm. And we are hunting not only to understand it, but to feel it, to move with it, to sing with it, to dance with it.
To hunt it, to catch it, to be caught by it.
Yes.
To be soulful, to be full of soul.
Yeah.
And that means we're more than being nice. We're actually full of spice, because soulful. And spice means we hold complexity.
Yeah.
We hold more than simply either ors and or both ands. We are contradictory. We are willing to be a paradox for life and death. We are willing to be tender in order to be strong. Tender in order to be better set on fire. So that complexity of spice and all its multi-leveled, unsayable, non-understandable components is what I think it means to be soulful. And down here we say you need to be muddy like the Mississippi. You need to learn from Old Man River. All of it, including the alligators, the snakes.
Alligator.
Welcome to the Mississippi.
And what does that say on the back right behind Hillary?
It says Drake, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a beer ad.
You know, it's from New Orleans, yeah. So
It was a highway sign. Yeah, it's
I love it.
highest road. That's a highway. That's cut out of a highway sign for a Big Easy beer. So it says drink, and of course that takes us back to the Kalahari. Because boy, what the two things they want to do is eat meat and drink God. They want to drink the big sky God. Actually, there's more to it than that. But when they say meat, the meat they really want to find is the meat that has a mystery name called Nom. And that word Nom, we don't really have a good translation for. It just bewitched and confused scholars of their culture for decades. And even today, if you use our language to make it explicit, but that's the key. That's the key. Soul has Nom. Nom is soul. In Japan, the old Japanese healers who were most directly connected to the samurai tradition would say Seiki. Sanctified parishioners of the old school black church would say, you need the Holy Spirit, you need the Holy Ghost. You need that swelling inside that explodes. And now it sounds like you're talking about a Bushman. Sounds like you're talking about a Seiki Jutsu master. All those books you mentioned with those names are really different words, different ways of pointing to the fire that has to be struck inside. Then you have to learn how to sustain it, and then you have to learn how to
express it, how to share it, how to bring it in to your everyday.
So to express it have a fire expression is the same as saying having a soulful expression. So it's all about the fire.
Sharing it, lighting it.
Let us never tire of evoking the fire. And constantly recognizing that so much has to be burned away. The debris that clings inside our mind the minute we think we know it needs to be swept away by the next prairie fire.
That's right.
So well said. I love it. And you too, just seeing videos and past interviews of you, the music expressive and the acting and the embodiment piece is something that will probably be better said from your end. But it wasn't in your background when I introduced y'all, and so the viewers might not know, but you two are both pretty talented. I know Brad is, and Hillary, I think you are too, musicians.
She's a professional dancer.
Professional dancer.
She studied dance more than anything in college, and she lived in the Zen Center in LA, but snuck out every night to be in the salsa clubs.
So I've always been a dancer, and I one of the things we do is I always invite people to learn to move their body in a way that doesn't even have to require any special dance performance or dance ability, because when you're feeling that heightened sacred emotion, your body will want to move. And when you want to wake up that life force, it's a whole other world of dancing to be dance when you're set on fire, when you're full of soul, than it is when you are performing in a more formal way. And yes, absolutely, we do a lot of movement. And Brad is a pianist and plays gospel, jazz, blues, all sorts of piano. We play a lot of songs from the American Songbook. We play a lot of Broadway musicals. So we have a whole musical diversity, because we feel like any song and any music that wakes up the heart and gets you moving is fair game for setting a fire.
Right, because the spiritual FireKeepers are song and dance people. The fire is conveyed, it's sparked. by expression that holds emotion, and that's song and dance. And Hillary, it needs to be said again, what Hillary pointed out. You don't have to be professionally trained. It's probably best if you're not, because then it'll be too consciously, choreographed. You want something to get hold of you, something to grab you, pull you. You want those ropes to dance you, pull you, move you around. You just want to be able to surrender to a mighty wind, to an invisible force, something felt that you can't hold back. It just takes you on an interesting ride, a ride into mystery. So I'm the song and she's the dance, and together, we make a lot of joyful noise, but we're just trying to kick open the door to get out of the small rooms that have been taught to us in all kinds of ways. Sometimes it's helpful and often it's not. We're trying to get to a bigger space that has no walls, where there's room for mystery, room for the sacred to be something felt, not something understood.
Yeah, and that was kind of leading into my next question, like the name Sacred Ecstatics Experiment. You kind of led into that answer, really, like getting out of the walls, out of the container that we're in, and just experimenting and embodying. It kind of leads me into our next question, since you two carry so much wisdom and so much experience, and from all over the world. And the question I wanted to ask was, like, based on your many years of experience and work and interactions with people, working with indigenous peoples from across the globe, what old wisdom about reinvigorating communities do you think is missing from our time?
Well, there's a number of things. I would say certainly one of the things I know is people coming together and getting spiritually cooked, singing together, dancing together, trying to, what Brad alluded to, saying, go to the big room together, have a dip inside infinity together. Because I don't think that human beings, that we can sort out all the complexity of being alive and working through the daily grind, not only of being inside our own families, but also in our communities, unless we have one foot on the other side of spiritual mystery, where there's a bigger wisdom there. And I think that one of the things that we've learned with Sacred Ecstatics is it really takes a community of people, and those people don't necessarily have to live in particular proximity to one another, but among human beings, it's not just about one single person having all the answers. It requires a whole group of people coming together and making sure that everybody has that experience of turning up the spiritual temperature and getting cooked. And only in that way do we all find what our particular role is going to be. Some of us will be the singers, some of us will be the medicine healers, some of us will be the dancers, some of us will be the thinkers and the builders. But unless we all cross over onto the other side and have one foot in mystery, I just think it's too hard, because otherwise we get in this place where we feel like we have to figure it all out on our own through rational means. And if there's anything scarier than that, it's getting too rational about things that require a much bigger electric juice to deliver.
And when Hillary says we need to first sing and dance in a way that opens the room and opens the heart, it's not the kind of singing and dancing that we've been taught to be familiar with.
Right.
It's a fire singing, a mum singing. It's a fire dancing, a fire mystery dancing that is nothing like anyone here has experienced. And we have to first start by being sure we're not so sure what all these words mean. whether we're saying them or we're reading them in a book.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we end up in a backfire. And all the healers I've ever met understand backfire. That is, you start out with the right intention and find out the intention didn't matter. It's whether you're doing it in a way that makes the room bigger and hotter till it bursts into flames. And to do that, we have to make sure that we don't fantasize studying faraway cultures and look at them through the eyes of anthropology and sociology and psychology and translate them into our models and ways of knowing, because that leads to a backfire. Then you have psychologized, popularized the romanticized other to create something that actually isn't going to help. You really need to go there and say, you sing in a different way. You dance in a different way. And one of the differences that you're trembling. And when you sing, you make a shrieking sound that doesn't sound like Ray Charles, and it doesn't sound like Pavarotti. There's a different kind of song and dance. Well, that song and dance is how the fire is awakened and how it's shared and how it's spread. And that's what we're talking about. Until communities find a way to access that spark, that fire, and that way of sharing it, we sort of think it's just going to be a lot of talk that's just more talk. Doesn't know how to walk, let alone dance or leap out of the paradigm that's so cheap for the richness of what is needed for the way we participate in it all. So that's sacred ecstatics. We left our academic jobs and we left all that kind of world that thinks in terms of how do you promote what people think they know. And we're about saying, you know what? You just don't know. If you're from here, you don't know. Let's start there. If you think you know, we're gonna do everything we can to show you, set you up to fall down, and till finally you say, there is something different I've missed, and that's when we begin. And whether we're pointing to our traditions that we have relations with, and they include the traditions of blues, they include bebop, they include Jimi Hendrix. He was a great fire tender. Those strings on that guitar set fires in the souls of those who were open enough to know this was a different kind of music. It had soul. And so our experiment is to take on the impossible. People who think they know, which is all educated people of our time, really don't know what is most essential. And to figure out how to crack that hard shell and to get a piercing of an arrow of fire that goes through and instills within them, now we're talking like Bushmen, instills within them a vibration that is more than just a vibration, because anybody could force themselves to shake. You know, you can make the physiological response, but this is a vibration that is inseparable from receiving a song. It makes you sing. Your voice starts to vibrate, and you get a song that has a vibration. And now you're coupling mechanical vibration of the fingertips and shaking of the whole body with the singing of tone, and you're relating to one another in that kind of way that has soul and has a fire that changes the room. Only then can we talk about what should we do about politics, economics, and about all the animal critters and all the bird wing flutterers and all the fish fin flappers. You know, before you can really talk about that, you need to get your soul aligned with the creator of all.
Yeah, and I also say to that
that's radical, isn't it?
It is radical. So sometimes we say it's really a top-down approach, and by that we mean if you don't have that direct hookup, that felt relationship, or what the Bushmen call a rope, for them they say God or sky God or big God, or some people say creator, some people just say God. It doesn't really matter to us what the name is, but unless you have that direct feeling, that relationship, that personal relationship, then it's really hard to do anything that is soul directed. And the other thing I'll just say that came up for me when you were talking is that in terms of maybe what's been lost from some indigenous cultures, particularly the ones that we've known, if we were sitting here with the Bushmen, they would say, well, what are your songs? What are the songs that you find holy?
And sing them for
and
us.
Sing them for us. Because it's not, sometimes people think like if we grow up, and not everybody grows up the same way. Some people grow up with a big relationship to, going once a week to church and singing and having that in their life, and not everyone does. But we say to people, it's been amazing when people reconnect with some of the songs that have been spiritual songs that they have a relationship to, or maybe that their grandparents had a relationship to. So it isn't about going off and saying, well, let me go find out what all the sacred songs are in the world that belong to indigenous cultures, because those are the songs that have the juice. If I want to understand what it's like to get spiritually cooked in the old Kalahari way, then I need to learn the Kalahari songs. It's like, well, you can learn some Kalahari songs, but it's really about the songs that wake up your heart. And so in our songbooks, we have songs that are old hymns, because those are songs that we have relationships to. We have songs that have come to us in vision, that then once they do, they become part of the sacred ecstatic songbook. And so it's really about recognizing that we're not all that different, and the things that we think that we have lost, those relationships to the songs that cook our heart, are really not as far away as we think that they might be.
And if we might just continue this, whatever this eruption of verbiosity is, I might just, because I'm inspired by what you said, that in our world of academic institutions and degrees and certificates and pieces of paper that tell ourselves that we know, words like relationship, ecology, the wild, and fire tend to be visualized and conceptualized. Whereas if you go to an ecstatic spiritual culture, and sacred ecstatics is just that, it's an ecstatic spiritual culture for our time. And an ecstatic spiritual culture says that a relationship is something felt as a rope. That is, I feel that I have threads, ropes, cords connected to everything. I'm not conceptualizing that. I'm saying I feel that. I feel the tug. Something's tugging on me. And that's, of course, the key to hunters and trackers. They are feeling, they know all the other stuff. They notice the spore, and they can, everything that's in the atmosphere that we can be taught to see and hear. But they're feeling the tug of a rope. And that rope usually doesn't come unless it's attached in a special kind of dream. It's usually an ancestor that will attach the rope to you. And if they attach the rope to you, to a kudu, then that rope, you'll find, has within it a song. That's why the rope and the song are always felt and always regarded as equal. A rope is a song, and a relationship is a rope. And a relationship and a rope is a song, and on it goes, round and round, and it's an emotion. More than anything, it's something felt. And when it's time to hunt a kudu, not all the kudus are designed by the sky god for hunting, just certain ones. That rope will pull on you, and you'll just follow that tugging to it and be able to provide for the community. That same rope, that same relationship, that same song, that same feeling is also with one another. So we have to feel the ropes we have with one another. With community, to have a community that's real. Otherwise, it's just an abstraction in which we think more thinking about it, more inking about it, is going to sort it out because we have a better paradigm. We have a better model. Nope, you need to start all over again and feel the rope and feel the tug and get a song. And when those ropes are felt, they're alive. And they are what send the fire from one living dwelling place to another, from from one temple of a human being to another of a bird, of another temple of a whale, and another temple of a whole redwood forest. Whatever the name of the containment of that which you are in relationship with is felt first, then sung, then seen through the eye of the unseen. And then we're ready to talk about what to do.
Yeah. Well, very well said. And the process was laid out really well. Thank you for that, Brad and Hillary. And yeah, I've always just been struck by how the Bushmen use that rope analogy, like through many different stories. And it just reminds me, like when you're just describing that, it reminds me of an elder out there that mentioned to me when I was finally getting around to learning Swahili, which is, I don't know if y'all even learn much of it, but it's a tricky language. And he said, I'm trying to remember the exact words. He said, words are just dirt, but when our words are sung, excuse me, I'll rephrase that. Words are just dirt, but when our words are said with heart, do they turn into grass and is braided into thread. And then when it's sung through heart and body, then it becomes with ropes and interconnected with living things. And we become that rope.
That's the basic teaching. That's the basic teaching. And we can say it today if we were addressing people at a school for performing arts, saying you need to first get off of literality. You start with taking things literally, misplaced terms, thinking everything's a noun, a reification, and with simplistic causality, this causes that, and all that nonsense. You've got to move from an ideological frozen posture and warm things up so that metaphors arise. Metaphors are more slippery. They mean many things at the same time. But pretty soon you start to feel rhythm ascend. So there's a meter, there's a beat. And on that, words start to rhyme. They start to climb. You're able to find a new kind of expression. And as that excites the whole of you, it breaks into the melody, which now rises above the rhythm. And the rhyme becomes a verse for a sung song. And this becomes even more exciting and breaks into movement and trembling and joy and leaps of exclamation. Pretty soon you're dancing and you're relating in a different kind of space and time. And all of these gear shifts are the climbing of the rope. And all of the changing forms of how we relate, express one to one another is the way the rope is built, is the way the rope is felt, is the way the rope is climbed. So again, be a song and dance man. Be a song and dance woman.
Ecologist.
A song and dance ecologist. If you want to have the fire within and share it. If you want to talk about the fire outside. If you want to talk about both the global warming and spiritual cooling, which go side by side. This is a time of global freezing of the soul, as it is global warming of the physical material nature of things. If you want to step into that in a more responsible way and make a difference that matters, then start with the kind of song, the kind of dance, the kind of emotion, the kind of excitation that enables all previous habits of knowing, which have really gotten us not very far, have they? Let all of that be swept away, start anew each and every time.
All the sounds of the earth are like music.
That's right.
Yeah.
Ray Charles could really sing that and give it the soul.
I would say that's one of our collective sacred songs.
It is.
Start there. We can start with any of the songs.
That's one of our songs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, what a beautiful morning.
Beautiful psalm too.
Yeah, sure is.
We use songs in our, it's a little side note, we use songs on our Vision Quest, like for calling songs, songs that will call people into the Death Lodge to prepare for their threshold experience. So very similar concept in every rites of passage, no matter what type of work you're in. Like that spiritual calling that set the soul cooking. I love your terminology on that.
Well, let's give credit where it's due. I mean, one of the things we found is that all over the world, that places that had soul referred to their ceremonies in terms of temperature. Either got hot or got a little warm, or it was just cold. And that's a metaphor we're bringing back. We call it spiritual temperature. Above all, take your spiritual temperature. Because if you're still cold, you haven't entered the warm, it's not going to be much creating going on, because creativity is found in the temperature zone of the melt.
Yes.
And past that, words slip away, because the heart becomes stronger than the words, and they become the songs, they become the joyful noises, they become the womb expression of spiritual cooking. So that really is how our ancestors tended to think about the nature of how we relate. They thought of what is the room we're relating in more than our personalities. They wanted to know more about the thermodynamics of the surrounding atmosphere. Is it spiritually hot and alive? Is it spiritually hot and creatively alive? Or is it spiritually cold and only told?
I like that. Just let y'all know we have about 10 minutes. Is it okay if we go over a little bit? Do y'all have plans for after this? I didn't want to take up your time, because I have one more question, and then we can go into we can close out. And we've kind of led into this question, but it'd probably be a good summarizing kind of question. And it's just, in what ways do you hope your work will touch people's lives?
I can remember when we left the university, we sort of naively said to one another, sort of our secret, let's see how many arrows of we can actually shoot and get across the hard shell of others who live outside these communities we've spent so much of our lives being a part of. And we had no idea. It's one thing to talk about this, but it's another thing to do it. Because I had, for years, had given arrows to young Bushmen and older ones as well, and
then to me,
and with each other, we knew we had this life, and we thought, what if we just set an experiment to see if it's possible? And lo and behold, we were shocked that people from all kinds of occupations, including those who never heard about any of this stuff, professional dancers, lawyers, medical doctors, school teachers, students, we found that people were receiving fire. And this really was a surprise. So we thought, once you receive it, the next challenge is, how do you sustain it? How do you keep it alive within? So that became the next experiment. And so in that way, Sacred Ecstatics began to become a full-formed experiment in how to shoot the fire of mystery, of the ineffable, of the numinous, and to then, in community, hold it, sustain it. And of course, this leads to, what do you do after you're spiritually cooked? Because it's not like a one-time thing. Because everyone who's a medicine person knows that after the ceremony, you go back to being an idiot, a complete unwise fool. And so over and over again, you have to step into the fire and get spiritually cooked. So you have that time afterwards where you're coming back to the cold, and you want to make that last as long as it can. Can you get it to last 24 hours, 48 hours, 7 days? That's even better. Then we can carry on once a week and keep the fire burning. Just before it flickers out, we'll relight it. Then we realized the experiments are how to go back in the world and shake up the world and get it ready to feel at least the warmth that's possible. And so that's how we began. And we've, right now we have a little, we call it a group of maverick seekers, maverick seekers who are really living on the outskirts of all other outskirts, have very little in common with what others will teach today, which is word conveyed. But of course, everything is word conveyed, but they don't have that heart infusion. But even more important, they don't have the soul infusion. Even more importantly, they do not have the moon infusion that helps awaken the music within, the jukebox within, as some of the old timers say it, the drum beat within that's never predictable and has a lot of syncopation and polyphony and alternation. Those things we have found as part of the sacred ecstatic experiment.
Yeah, and it's been amazing because for all of us involved, people, one of the things that I have loved about this experiment is that it's always a surprise. It's people join us and no one ever knows what will happen to any of us. No one ever knows when we'll get cooked, who will get, as the Bushmen would say, a nail of Noam, or get struck by a fireball, get the fire in the bones. And so it's just been amazing to see how people have transformed, because once they catch that fire or that sacred emotion, then they start to live in a different kind of way.
No turning back.
And then, yes, no turning back. And the next time.
Well, you can't turn back, but you're not going to like it. You're going to turn right around again.
That's exactly right. Because suddenly, for example, people will say, when life gets you down, instead of going through whatever route they used to go through, to either numb it or dumb it or seek some understanding of it, they just say to themselves, wow, I am really spiritually frozen right now, and I need to thaw. And they get those songs going, and they, as we say, they get that mystical prayer wheel turning, and they wake up their body instrument, and they realize that all they need is a rhythm and a tone and a good song and a prayer line, and they can turn themselves around.
Yeah.
And that is old time, old school living that doesn't require that we have a lot of elaborate understanding or scriptural memorization, but it's about being an alive body instrument, musical being.
That's the revolution. The revolution that is the wheel of life that turns and burns and learns a different way of being a part of the ecology of it all. Is really not about indulging in psychologic. It is being not a psychological being, but someone who says, who am I? You're a tone. Change it. Who are you? You're a rhythm. Change the rhythm. Who are you? You're a body that moves. Now, have changing tones, changing rhythms, changing movements, all aligned. Infuse it with higher emotion. That emotion will blend it, form it into a wheel, and everything will increase in its changing, its vitality, its creativity, and it'll get warmer and warmer and hotter until it bursts into a fire. So we're talking to the tones, the rhythms, and the body movements of people. Blend them. But most of all, infuse it, water it with a downpour of sacred emotion, the feeling, the wonderment of mystery, the splendor of the numinous glory. That is how we build a new room, a new community, a new reality. And that is the ecology of spirituality.
It could not be better said. I think y'all summed that up really nicely. Is there anything else y'all want to add in? We're actually, good timing, by the way. We're right at 4. And if there's anything else you want to add in, we have a couple overflow.
Well, we just wanted to say that obviously for people who want to know more, everything is on our website at sacredecstatics.com. And we have all of these. We have actually 3 books that you mentioned that are really our foundation.
And notice the cover of each is the fire.
And the red one The green one, the blue one.
Yeah.
But spiritual engineering and sacred ecstatics, they're all on our website. And actually, if you go to our website and you sign up to our mailing list, you can get a free ebook copy of the first one, which is the spiritual or the sacred ecstatic, setting your soul on fire. And of course, the other thing about our work is that the reason we call it an experiment in part is because it's always changing, because the way that we teach and the way that we create experiences are guided by vision. And so when we have a visionary period and we have a dream that tells us what to focus on or sends down a lesson or brings us a song, then that gets stirred into the community and becomes part of what we do. So we like not knowing exactly what will take place. Yeah. When we wake up in the morning in an intensive, or we get ready to make, you'll see on our website that we create special audio tracks that get people moving and working the spirit at home. We never know exactly what the metaphors will be, what the themes will be, what the songs will be, and what the topics will be. And we like to keep it that way because above all else, we want to make sure that this experiment is not being directed by our rational, human limited minds, but by our ropes to mystery.
So, in the final analysis, we are all about the sunrise of surprise and all about the sunset of a whole body reset. So we wish you a delightful, wonderful fire that will never stop evoking transitions, and never, ever forget that each of us is a rhythm. Each of us is a tone. Each of us is a movement. So use all you got. Have all those things in play. That's what's going to make for a more surprising day. Thank you so much for being a part of this.
Yes.
Thank you, guys. And for the viewers who watched this interview, they're Hillary and Bradford. That's my throat talking there. You can find their free ebook copy, Sacred Ecstatics, the recipe for setting your soul on fire, on the speaker page. It'll be in the free gift URL, as well as underneath their description. And as Hillary said, you can find a lot more questions on their website. Hillary, Bradford, thank you so much. That was so informative, and I love talking with you. And I can't wait for all the viewers to flood the gates.
Thank you so much, Ben. We really appreciate it.
Ben.
Thank you so much, and have a blessed day. And we'll see you around the bend.
Yes.
See you at the fire.
Yes.
See you at the fire.
Okay. Bye.
Take care. Bye.